Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this evening. This is a beginning a series of 4 speaker series for our families here at the McGuffey School District. The next 4 series, beginning with tonight, will be recorded. So the information that we're going to share tonight on mental health and wellness for our kiddos is going to be something that we will then share through our public domain, through our website, and have a couple of places where families can access this. So I appreciate having families here tonight, and I appreciate all of you being with us tonight. We have decided that through the course of the next 4 series, so there will be mental health and wellness tonight. We're going to have a series on bullying prevention, on social media, and finally on drugs, alcohol, and vaping. All issues that we know are impacting our students. I am a dad of 3. My youngest is now a freshman in high school, and I can tell you from my son, who's now receiving his master's, to my youngest, Mia, the changes that have happened and the things that even from girls to boys that they face. So we felt it important to have experts come and speak to our families about these particular issues. And the first and foremost, of course, is mental health. I've used this analogy oftentimes when I was speaking with my administrative team, that when I played sports, the only way I was able to improve my craft, the only way I was able to get good at what I was doing, as in this case a football player, was I had expert coaches. Coaches that along the way could show me how to improve my craft. I see these speakers over the next 4 evenings that we'll have together similar to a coach. They're here to help our families, to help our moms, dads, guardians, because I got to tell you, I often feel inadequate. I often feel like I don't have all the necessary things to help even my youngest. So that's the goal. And the second goal, and I will tell you this is very important, and we've talked about this a lot in the district. I believe we do a lot when it comes to safety and security of our students, from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. That's a priority in addition to education. There's nothing more important to McGuffey besides your child's education than their health. But if we're only addressing it from the inside of our school doors, like that's where it stops. This communication, this information, helping families to help their kids, then we're not meeting the needs of our families. And I will tell you, the goal from this point forth is to see, and I know this can't be seen on the video itself, but by the next speaker series, to have this room full, have it overflowing, to have more chairs brought into this, because honestly, we can't do this by ourselves. And that's one of our goals too, is to continue to communicate this with our families. Okay? So with that said, as I said, there was no particular order in which I was going to call up our speakers, but our first speaker tonight is going to be Rebecca Salisbury. Rebecca is coming to us from the Washington County Human Services. I'm going to do a pass-off. This is a speaker, the microphone, I'm sorry, that you can add to
Perfect.
There. And with that, a round of applause for Ms. Rebecca Salisbury.
Hello. Thank you so much for letting me come today to kind of talk a little bit about mental health, what all we can do at Human Services, and really who we are and how we can assist. So I say I come from Washington County Department of Human Services. I am the Clinical Unit Director and the Help Center Director. In addition, I am also the Chair for the Pathfinders, which is Washington County Suicide Prevention Task Force. And I am also the Chair of our Out of the Darkness Walk here in Washington County, coming to you for the 3rd time this year. So I get to do a lot of different things, and I get to work with a lot of different individuals. One of the things that I get to do is I am a trained American Foundation of Suicide Prevention trainer, and I am able to present different trainings along the line. We're going to do this very high level today. This training typically takes about 45 minutes. You're going to get like a 5 minutes. I'm going to wrap it up in 5 minutes just to kind of give you an overview. If you want more information, if you want to see the entire presentation, please feel free to reach out. I am more than willing to do that one-on-one. I'm willing to do that with your family. Whatever you might need, if there's a group that you'd like it to present it to, let me know. It's an open invitation. We can do that at any time based upon the availability of you. So it's Real Teens and Mental Health really is geared towards middle school, high school, parents, and for their children. What's it look at? It's an overview of mental health. It's looking at the signs that you can look for. It's how to ask questions and how to get the help and supports and resources that you might need. What is mental health? We all have mental health. Mental health is just how we're feeling. Sometimes we could be feeling really great, sometimes we feel really low. Sometimes mental health, I like to compare to Pennsylvania weather. You wake up, it's sunny, beautiful, you don't need a coat, and then the next thing you know, we have snow and ice, and it is a little bit of a blizzard out there. You just never know, and it kind of goes all throughout the day. It's complex, but it's important that we take care of it, know where we're at, and where our friends are at, where our families are at, because that impacts us as well. It's just part of being human, and mental health isn't a bad thing. Only time it really becomes a bad thing is when we don't know what to do with it. So how do we know the signs? We talk about this. It's the way people talk. Are they usually a really happy, positive person, and all of a sudden their talk is down? Are they making comments that you haven't heard that before? Are their behaviors changing? Are they no longer interested in going to that sports game? Are they no longer interested in reading a particular magazine? Things that they cared about, things that they like to do, it just seems as a switch. And mood. Yes, kids have mood swings. I have 2 daughters myself, and we are getting those preteen years, and but it's that little bit of different of it's uncontrolled, maybe it's a lashing out. So what do? How do you start a conversation? It can be really hard to know what to say. We all have, I'm sure at some point, have said something and like, ooh, I should have said that maybe a little bit different. The only wrong thing is not saying anything at all. So it's, hey, it seems like you're having a rough day, you want to talk. Haven't been able to catch up for a while. Can we sit down and talk? What's going on? How can I help you? What can I do? And those conversations could just be in general. It doesn't necessarily need to be that someone's having a rough day. It's just those check-ins. So, do some examples. Worried about you? What's up? How can I help? What can I do for you? We go over 5 different ways, but then we also talk about how do we take care of ourselves. So, not only is mental health about checking with other people, but what do we do for ourselves? What do we enjoy doing? Is it reading a book? Is it going for a walk? Is it listening to a particular music? So self-care is really big on how do we handle when we're stressed. We have a test, or maybe there's some arguing going on, or holidays can cause a little bit of stress. What are we doing for ourselves? We've tried to provide those skills and really reinforce to what is that, how are you doing it, and making sure what you do. I asked a group of adults yesterday what was one self-care thing that they did for themselves within the past week. And here, has anyone in here done anything for themselves within the past week that was self-care? All right, but if you look around, the hands did get up. So we are also really bad at taking care of ourselves. And it's important that well, it's hard to schedule those things, but you take a little bit moment of a day and you take care of yourself as well. Whether that's having a cup of coffee that you might like, just taking a few minutes to read a couple of pages of a book. Coloring stresses me out, so I would never color, but if you like to color, those types of things, finding things that you like to do, even if it's just 30 seconds, that each day you're going to give yourself 30 seconds of just doing something that you enjoy, but then also encouraging those in your family to do that as well. What's 30 seconds of something we can do that we are all going to enjoy? Just like you got a 45 minutes in about a 5-minute window. If you want to know more, want to see more of this, I would love to be able to provide that to you. The American Foundation of Suicide Prevention in Washington County has teamed up for the past 3 years. We have the Out of the Darkness Walk. It is at the Main Street Pavilion again this year. This event is, if you've never attended one, it's mind-blowing. The community comes together really with a common vision to support, stand behind each other, and just be there. There is a resource fair beforehand. There's usually about 30 different places coming to this. They're giving out different swag. There's breakfast usually included. There is a sign that says hope that everyone signs on it. We have a very touching opening ceremony where we go over different bead colors and what do those bead colors mean. And then we walk together. We stand all together to really hope to put an end to suicide prevention awareness and let everyone know that mental health matters. So if you are available, if you'd like to join or want more information, there is a form back there, but we would love to see you there. I know McGuffey has had a team the past 2 years. I mentioned that I am the chair of the Pathfinders. This is a group that is formed about 3 years ago. The Pathfinders is the Washington County Suicide Prevention and Awareness Task Force. They meet every other month, the fourth Tuesday at 10 o'clock via Teams or in person. This group is looking at ways that they can reach out, education that they can provide. This group is made up of professionals from different areas. It's made up of veterans. It's made up of moms, kids, you name it. This is just a group of people who join together that want to end suicide. Really, that's how it's formed, and what they're trying to do and what they have been doing is providing that comfort and support. They also put together their first International Survivor Suicide Loss Day. So if you're looking at ways to get involved, looking for support, just in general, please know that there's always an open invitation to join those as well. As always, if you were experiencing crisis, and I'm sure you'll kind of get more into that, we always refer to our SPHS crisis services, which are available 24/7 here. And last but not least, I just want to mention the Help Center. So we've talked about mental health, and sometimes mental health can also lead to other things as well. And sometimes we don't know where to turn, who can help us. Sometimes people don't know where they're going to get their meal that night, and that can cause a lot of stress as well. Washington County does have a help center that can help with those types of things. They're going to identify what is the need that you're calling for now, how can we be proactive, how do you need to be connected, do you know about what supports and resources exist in Washington County, whether they be mental health, whether they be food, housing, social connection. These individuals really are the experts that are going to help navigate that field that can be confusing. If you've ever tried it, it can be confusing. But they're also going to follow up and make sure that those connections work. So if you've not heard about it, first time you're hearing about it, if you've not tried it or have not put out that information, call Connection to Resources 1234. There's stickers back there. Please, at any time, reach out if you want more information. I am always available. That's all I've got.
Thank you. And I forgot to mention at the very beginning, there will be a time at the end. We'll let all the speakers go first for questions. So at that point, we'll stop the video, but there will be time. And thank you for mentioning that too. Again, in the back, there is a table full of resources. I'd ask everyone before you leave, take a moment, take a look at that. Our next speaker series, again, it's going to be on bullying prevention, is Thursday, April 4th, same time, 6 to 8 o'clock. We'll provide food, and again, I want to thank Ms. O'Connor for providing that for us tonight, so thank you very much. And as we're doing that, I'm going to transition over to Ms. Rice. And Ms. Rice is from Southwest of Pennsylvania Human Services. So for Ann, for being here tonight.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm a little less formal. I don't have a PowerPoint, so I'll hang out up here and chat with all of you. I'm going to start with the program that I work for, and I'll give you some background on what we do. I want to talk a little bit about how the school has utilized us this year, because the district's done a really great job with our services. And then I'm going to talk about, as you had mentioned, like our crisis services and our behavioral health services as well. So I work for the SPHS Care Center STARS program. STARS stands for Sexual Trauma Treatment and Recovery Services. It is a mouthful. We are a rape crisis center that serves Washington and Greene counties, and we work out of the care center in Washington. So we are down on Maiden Street. If you're familiar with Washington at all, we're just right down the hill from the courthouse, across the street from the Salvation Army location. So everything that we do in my department at STARS does involve sexual assault, whether that is my job, which is going out to do prevention programming, but we also offer a lot of free services to survivors. So we offer free counseling. We have locations in Washington, Waynesburg, and Charleroi for this. You would be able to utilize whichever one you preferred that was closest to where you live. We also do offer our counseling now through telehealth. So there is an app that they use where you can meet in a confidential way with a counselor on our staff. If you want to do that from home, if transportation's an issue, anything like that, we can offer those services as well. Our counseling does not bill insurance. meaning that somebody can be going to another counselor for mental health services, but come to us just to deal with that sexual trauma piece because we are grant funded, so there's never any billing of insurance through our program. So that's a really nice benefit that we have sometimes. Just because we're so used to dealing with this, our counselors have a lot of experience and even helping with things like making victim impact statements if somebody's case is going through the court system, that sort of thing. So we also offer legal advocacy, meaning that if somebody has been assaulted in Washington or Greene County and they are going to a police interview, they're going to a hearing or a trial, we can go with them to accompany them kind of as a support system. And the judicial system is really confusing, so we can kind of clarify that a little bit, help them interact with police, the DA's office, all that sort of stuff. And as I said, our counselors do help folks develop victim impact statements as well, if that's going to be a part of their court proceedings. And then we do medical advocacy. So if somebody presents at a hospital in Washington or Greene and they've been sexually assaulted and they're in need of a rape kit, we're able to meet them at the hospital and be an advocate through that process as well. So we stay with them throughout that rape kit. We just explain like what this process is, what comes next with legal steps. We make sure that they're getting what they want because any person can refuse any part of a rape kit at any point, and that kit still is allowed to go on and be performed. They are not billed. We always make sure that nobody's being billed through insurance. The state covers that. So our job is just to be there as that support and kind of that knowledge, who knows how to work through that little system as well. And aside from that, we do offer volunteer services. We have volunteers who help us with our hotline. We do have a 24-hour hotline. That information's available. I have our brochures over on the table, and when you flip them to the back, it has our hotline number on there. So someone can call our hotline 24/7, whether they're in crisis and they're just needing to talk about a sexual assault, whether they just heard about us and they're interested in counseling and they want to see how do I get that ball rolling. We're always there. One of us will answer, and we're there 24/7 for medicals as well. So we do have volunteers who help us only with the hotline portion. They don't do the medicals. That's on us. But we do have those volunteers. But we have volunteers who come into the office and just help us prepare mailings, do some work around the office, just the things that we need. So if anybody would ever be interested, that is an option that we have. So this school year, McGuffey in particular has done an awesome job of really utilizing the free services that we have. They had me come in back in November, and I just came in again, I think last month in February, and did the mandated reporter training for all of the teachers, the whole district-wide, the staff. I think we had custodians, we had cafeteria staff, everybody in there. Such an important training for schools to get. Obviously, there is a legal requirement for them to have that training, but taking that extra step of bringing somebody in to do that is so beneficial. There are free online versions of that, which do get you the information, but it's just never as helpful as having a person that you can kind of ask questions to. So they had me come in and do that in 2 rounds, because in the first round we couldn't get everybody, so they wanted to make sure to fill in the rest, the folks who couldn't make it, so I came in and did that both rounds. Those were 3-hour training sessions where I got to give a lot of examples and explain the CPSL, which is the Child Protective Services law here in Pennsylvania, so that the teachers and staff know exactly what they need to do if a child would disclose any type of abuse, and they know how now to make those reports if they were unaware, and they also know how to handle those disclosures if a child reaches out and says that. Always a hard moment, right? We never want that to happen. We don't want any of the kids to be abused or have to disclose something, but it does happen. And for teachers in particular in school districts, kids are really comfortable with them, right? Like, they're coming here all the time. They build really strong relationships. So often teachers are in that position to get those disclosures. So they did a great job having me come in for that, and then they've been having me come into the schools as well. In the past month, I've come here to the middle school twice to do a NetSmarts program. So that is an internet safety program for teens that we offer. It's actually presented by the National Center for Missing and Endangered Children. They created the PowerPoint, and I deliver it. But we talk about things like sexting, oversharing information online. We talk about using privacy settings on those apps and why that's so important. We talk about some of the laws. We talk about cyberbullying. It's a really nice program just to kind of remind kids that this is real, right? I talked about some cases that we have dealt with and that we're currently dealing with kids their age, because kids think, you know, I've heard this my whole life. I know that I shouldn't meet somebody in person that I met online, but it keeps happening, right? Every year in Washington County, we have at least one case where that's going on. So they brought me into the middle school. I will be coming in to do that with the high schoolers as well in May. And then I've been going to the elementary centers for several years now. I offer a program at Joe Walker in Claysville called the 3 Kinds of Touches program. And it's a storybook that I read basically kindergarten through 2nd graders. And we talk about just these 3 types of touches: safe touches, which are ones that we would expect, right? Hugs, pats on the back, high five. We talk about ouch touches, so when you're angry and you hurt someone on purpose. And in that portion, I have the kids identify ways we can calm down that keep people safe. My biggest one is probably playing Roblox or something. That's what they all tell me. I play on my iPad. But we do that, and then we talk about uh-oh touches. And uh-oh touches for our younger kids, we don't go into any kind of graphic descriptions. I teach them a rhyme that says from our knees to our nose where our bathing suit goes, or the private parts of the body, and they're off limits. And that's really as in-depth as that gets. We don't discuss the proper names of body parts, but we want them to know that those parts of the body are private. We talk about times where adults may need to look, right? Whether you're at a doctor's appointment, mom and dad are helping you get a bath, or the kids have taught me this one. I don't feel like it was a thing in my time, but tick bites. I keep getting that one all the time. My parents check me for ticks. And I'm like, really? When I was your age, nobody checked us for ticks. But it's a thing. So we go over that with them, and then we have all the students identify as safe adults. Usually people at home, and we make sure to address the grown-ups at school too, right? Your teachers, guidance counselors, school police officer, principals, just so students know there is a really robust support system built in here, even if those folks at home maybe aren't listening or aren't attentive, whatever that might be. So we've been doing a lot of programs here this year, especially at McGuffey. We're always glad to come in. So thankful that they're having us. We appreciate that. So I want to go over a couple more services at the care center that might be applicable to people. One, I've left brochures for all of these on the table, and I'm going to leave the leftovers here at the school if you want to distribute them between high school and middle, whatever that is. But this is a brochure for our outpatient behavioral health at the care center. So it is a little bit different. My department specifically, STARS, which is the Rape Crisis Center, we are grant funded, meaning we don't bill insurance for anything. Outpatient does bill insurance. If you would call in need of some sort of mental health counseling and for some reason they don't take it, they do refer you to the correct location that does take that insurance. But they offer mental health and drug and alcohol counseling. They have psychiatrists on staff who are able to prescribe if someone's in need of those meds. So really good counselors over there. They're licensed professional counselors. And that's a great option that people can have. They're again at the care center right across the hall from us. So if anyone is in need of that, very important service. And then we also have brochures for our crisis services. So crisis is a really important and amazing service that we offer. It is here in Washington County 24/7, as you had mentioned. The number is on the back of these brochures. And again, I'll leave some here at the school as well. But somebody can access crisis if they're having one of those moments of crisis, right? Whether they're having suicidal thoughts or ideations, whether they are manic and they're dealing with an episode, they haven't been taking their meds, whatever that looks like. If they've been sexually assaulted, they'll link them up to us. So somebody can access crisis either by phone on that hotline number. They do take walk-ins. The crisis building is on Henderson Avenue along 18 out by the Circle K, if you're familiar with that. It's kind of by Lowry's, the boot store. That's how I know it as the boot store. So it's out there. They do take those walk-ins. And crisis does mobile crisis as well. So if they get a call from somebody who's potentially suicidal, they can go to that person's house and meet with them in that moment to try to de-escalate that situation, help them get through that. If somebody is in need of inpatient treatment, they can work to get them put into the hospital with that 302 system. So crisis does a lot of really great things. My supervisor told me that they do take insurance if you have it, but it's never a barrier to get the services. So if there's a family who doesn't, they're absolutely allowed and should call crisis just as well, and they'll help them as well. So there's no barrier to getting those services. So SPHS does offer a lot of services. I always describe us as like a mini UPMC, like we just keep growing and we're everywhere. We have counselors who come into the schools here at McGuffey as well and offer some school-based counseling. So lots of that information out there. And again, at the end, if you have any questions or comments about our services, I'm here to answer those. There's some brochures, and I left some baggies that have, I think, a couple giveaways in them and some brochures and information as well. So thank you very much for having us in. Yes, thank you. Oh, yes. So I don't keep it forever.
So I have to apologize, Andrea. I wrote down your name, but I didn't write down phonetically. So, Lauer. Again, I apologize. Andrea Laurer is from the Highmark Caring Place. And do you need to have set up back here for you?
I just need to plug the HDMI in. I think it'll take over.
I'll give you that. Is it ready? Is it right here? This is the.
No, let me show you.
Okay.
Oh, this is slick. Okay. This way?
Yeah.
Okay. If we just take this cord and put it in here, it seems to override.
Yep.
Did it do anything?
Yep.
Oh, it's always nice when the technology behaves. Oh my goodness. Can I stand? I don't want to.
Right here is fine.
Is that okay?
Anywhere within these tables will be on the video.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. This is actually the second school I've been to this week where I'm seeing more and more schools offering direct programming to parents and community about what's available. So thank you. It's new and it's really important, and so I do hope it grows. I'm Andrea Laurier. I'm the Clinical Services Director of the Highmark Caring Place, and I want to be thinking about what can I share with you today that's relevant. We have 2 locations. I'll talk in a minute, but we're downtown Pittsburgh and up in Warrendale. So I recognize that some of our direct services might be difficult for you to access, although from our point of view, if you can physically get there, you can come. And we have had families come to our services, and we would buy them gas cards and things like that. So if this could be appropriate for someone you know, we would really want to do everything we can to remove some barriers. So, but I do recognize that during the pandemic, we had a virtual program, which we don't have right now. So with that said, let me kind of go on. We are the Highmark Caring Place, and we provide peer support for children who have had a family member die. And I've been with the Caring Place for over 20 years now, and actually Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, was the honorary chair of our board, and his philosophy was, we need to find a way to talk about the hard things. We need to get comfortable talking about things that are difficult, because if we can, it will help our children. And so how do you make the difficult things kind of mentionable and manageable? And 20, 25 years ago, and even today, we have a really hard time talking about grief. So this is kind of a program that addresses the idea that we understand that even very young children grieve, and they benefit from support. So our program is also, it's good to know, there's no cost to our program. Highmark pays for the program, but does not require Highmark insurance. It's the arm of Highmark that gives back to the community, and they just decided that we think grief is important, so we are just going to have these programs. So that's one thing. The other thing is that it's a peer support program, and so we don't provide therapy. And if we think a family needs therapy and can benefit from therapy, we would make a referral. But as I talk about the program, what I'll say is that, grief is really hard, and it's normal. And so we work to not pathologize grief and let kids know that however they're feeling, as difficult as it is, we can work together and we can work through this journey. And then while I am a professionally trained clinician, most of the work then in our groups are done by volunteers that we train. So I will always put a plug out for volunteers. But yes, the work directly with the children in the groups are just dynamite volunteers who we train in our program. So, this is a tough topic because grief impacts all of us, and I don't know your stories. I don't know where you are in your family stories. I don't know if maybe there's a family member you're concerned about, or maybe you're recently bereaved. And so, I always think about these programs are always kind of for all of us in a way. Like we're always here to support and be supported. So it's natural, but at the same time, I don't think we understand how all-encompassing grief is. It's really like being it's like being hit by a truck. I mean, it physically hurts when we're grieving. It affects how we sleep, how we eat. We don't feel good. And this is true for our children. It affects how we feel about things. It changes how we think about our friendships. And so, you know, we try to educate people that even though we may not always know that you're grieving because we can't tell what's going on the inside of you. If someone you care about has died, I just assume that there's something going on inside that's very difficult. And so this is what I say is you can't tell the impact by just looking at someone. And we work a lot with children because children are amazing at putting a mask on and hiding how they're feeling. Sometimes because they don't want to bother the adults and they protect them, but also I just don't know that they even know sometimes the language. Like, how do I help you understand all that I'm feeling? And also, we hope that grief would be something kind of, you know, step by step. Like maybe there's a workbook to it, or, you know, we talk about stage models of grief. And so I've heard children and adults say, well, I'm in my anger phase, I'm in my denial phase. The problem is that you don't actually go through a phase and then put it behind you. What actually happens is much more like what happens on the right, and it's a big tangle, and it's, so what happens is people experience the tangle and they think, I must be failing, I'm not doing it right. And so when we talk to families and children, we explain that it's really normal for grief to come around and around. And in fact, we talk about it being on a spiral. So just a couple of things to let you know. We do a lot of education in the schools, and Mrs. Lambie has brought us here to do professional development, because how do you recognize grief in your child? How do you recognize grief in your students? And these are some of the things that we see often, and just a couple that people are sometimes surprised about. One is fear and anxiety. Like when I started working at the Caring Place, I realized that people who are grieving would feel sad, but I never realized how anxious you feel, and that if you've had a significant loss in your family, you're anxious about what else can happen. And so these are kids whose world has just become a little bit less predictable, a little bit less, I expect this to happen. I can be pretty sure that I can have a day and it's going to go just fine. If you've had someone die suddenly, it's like all bets are off. And so I find that our grieving kids can often be a little bit anxious. And so helping to normalize that. The other one is a lot of anger. I had a teenager, and I got to know him very well, very well-mannered, intelligent young man, and he came to our program, and his brother had died, and it was many years later, he shared this when he was like, Andrea, I got to tell you something. He said, when I went back to school after my brother died, I remember walking through the hall and hitting the door so hard without realizing it that I broke the glass. And so he said, you know, I didn't realize all that was going on in me. And so he said, you know, anger, I was really angry. And so we work in our program to help children and teens understand that anger is part of it. You can feel so cheated, but how do we help you express that in safe ways? Like, what do you do with the mad that you feel? So if you ever come to the Caring Place, we have a room with a punching bag, and you can knock everything over, and you can jump on a crash mat, and, you know, because sometimes you just got to get it out of you. So we work with children and we work with students to understand, like, these are normal things that you might be experiencing. And they come around and around. So just to kind of point out something in case any of you are, you know, in the presence of someone who's grieving, what we understand is that the intensity of feelings come around a little bit like a slinky. So you can imagine the old-fashioned slinkies. They don't make them as good as they do. You know, they're plastic now and they're not as durable. But if you take a slinky and just kind of imagine opening it and closing it, we see that grief comes around. And there are times we expect it. Like if we talk to the children, they'll say, well, every time my dad's birthday comes around, I know it's a hard day, or the holidays. But what can sometimes happen and what we talk about there are those unexpected times when the grief comes around. And these are the ones that you might be at school or you might be at work, and all of a sudden, and if we were to kind of sit and brainstorm a little, like a song will come on, or a smell of mac and cheese, or you'll see someone that looks like your person. There's different things that we weren't expecting, and all of a sudden we're right back there. And so we work with schools to support students, and we say to them, you might have a grief attack at school. So how can we set up a plan throughout your day when if you're worried about this, you can go to your counselor, or you can go to the principal, or someplace you feel safe, go to the gym, and just kind of take a breather, because grieving children are very worried that they are going to embarrass themselves at school, because the waves of feelings will come over. So these are some things that bring the grief around. We also recognize that in families we can take turns grieving. I've had parents tell me that, oh my goodness, I was a mess for the first few months, and my kids were stronger than me. And then when I started feeling better, it was crazy. My kids started, having such a hard time. And I say, sometimes in families we learn how to take turns, and we figure out, when mom's a little more put together, then I'm gonna lean into my grief a little bit. And so I just say this because at the Caring Place we do have a family program, and we recognize that the whole family comes together. So while on a group night I might be in with other adults, my children would be with other children their age. And so we have time to be with peers, but also we decide this is something we do as a family. Just a couple of things. There's never a right thing or wrong thing to say. I've made these lists, and I've had kids scratch them out and put just the opposite. And so there's no recipe, but what I will say is that two things. A little bit like what I heard today. Sometimes it's just better to say something rather than say nothing. We're so afraid of saying the wrong thing that we just freeze. And most of the children I know, it's like, it's okay. It's okay to, say, I remember your dad. I miss him too. It's like, it's okay. So these are some things that kids have said were helpful. I'm just sad to hear. I'm just really sad to hear that your brother died or your friend died. If you want to talk about it, I'm here. Just tell me about your grandmother. And also things like, I really don't know what it feels like, but I'm really open to hearing what it's been like for you. And so conversely, what's a little harder is when a lot of times when we're hearing stories, we're tempted to say, me too. Oh my gosh, I know exactly how you feel. And what kids have said is, please don't do that, because then I start having to listen to your story, and I'm really needing you to hear my story. Sorry is a tough one. I don't think it's so bad to say I'm sorry. It's like we all say we're sorry, but what kids have shared with me is it starts feeling like I'm sorry, I feel sorry for you. And it begins to feel a little bit like pity. So I'm like, okay, I will let people know that that's not as helpful. And then these other ones are just our tendency to have a really difficult time sitting with children who are in pain. And we want to distract them from it. We want to cheer them up. We want to say, your person wouldn't want you to feel that way. And what I would say is, when I work with people who want to work with children who are grieving, I say, don't worry, everyone else will be saying these things. So you don't have to say those. You can be the person that says, you know what, this does really, really stink. And we can just sit here and it's just going to stink, and I'll be here with you. So I just encourage people that if you're able to, allow for some of the sad feelings. And then I find when kids feel heard and they feel you're with them, it's amazing how their feelings lighten. It's just, like, I don't understand the chemistry about that. But somehow when you're sharing your feelings and people get it, like, I actually feel a little better. Now, I'm going to be real brief about the Caring Place because for time. But we have we bring families together in our program. And they call in. It's always a parent or caregiver. They would call in and talk to one of the staff, and we would just get some general information and think through whether a peer group would be helpful. Some kids, it's not helpful to talk with a lot of other people. It's like too much. So we really think through what the child's needs are and what the family's needs are. If it seems like it could be helpful, we bring families down to the caring place for a walkthrough, like an orientation, so they can see the place, spend some time in the rooms, meet some other children who are thinking of attending, and kind of get a sense of mastery, like, you know, I know where the bathrooms are, I know where my room is, because grief can make you feel like a lot of self-doubt and hesitancy. So we want them to go through a trial run and see what it's like. And then when families go through our program, just so you know, they can come back as often as they need to. I'm starting a group next week of families who have been through our program before, and some of these kids I've known for a couple years. And, you know, it's interesting to be 8 years old and have experienced, you know, my dad died, but now I'm a teenager and I still don't have my dad. And so I find they tap back into the program as they develop and they grow. And like, I just want to be with other kids who get what I'm going through. And what I will just say is what we do is we give them opportunities with art, discussion, games, basketball, like whatever it takes to give them an opportunity to share their story. We do a lot around feelings because grief brings so many different feelings. I have to point out this one. This is my favorite body drawing. Do you see this here? This little bug on the leg? Like, I get that feeling so much. It's like I can't stand being in my own skin. And I think that's how, like, perfectly put. And so these kids will express, like, what this is like for them. We do a lot about memories because children are worried they're going to forget their person. And so we write memories, we make memory boxes to hold things, and we do groups in schools. We do the same thing, like staying connected to your person matters. And we also do things like talk about how has this changed you? How are you different? And a lot of children will say, you know, after a while, this takes time. Of course, I would never have wanted to lose my person. But I also have to admit, I find that I'm a compassionate person. And I'm actually a person some of my friends go to now because they know I would be a person who could hear what they're going through. So, you know, grief can change us in ways that's very difficult, but also in ways that we grow from. And the last thing I will say is that we really cannot cure grief. That's like, we can't take grief away. But I find that when families come through the program, they feel less alone. I think families find it easier to talk with each other about their losses. And I think they feel more hopeful. I think they feel like I can have this difficult thing happen to me, and also it won't define me, that I have much more life ahead of me. So sometimes people think if they come to the caring place, it would be a very sad place. It's actually a place of a lot of laughter and hope and tears and being proud and courageous. It's just all of it. And I just end with the Fred Rogers quote because I just can't think of a way to say it any better, that, you know, it's really natural that we find different things difficult to talk about. But it's important to find ways of talking about anything that's human because we can mention it and we can manage it if we have trust and support. So that's all about the caring place. I'm so pleased that the school has had us here because we have done school groups here for families that can't get downtown. We have done professional training for the staff here, and we also do presentations in the classroom just to talk generally to students about, you know, what is grief and how could you support a friend who's grieving, to just gently begin to introduce the topic. So thank you. Take the microphone.
Before we finish, I want to give Mrs. Lau, if you want the opportunity, we had spoken a couple weeks ago. Mrs. Lau is a fourth grade teacher at Joe Walker, and I don't think you even knew at the time we were talking that we were going to do this. And then as soon as she we were talking about some things, commonalities that we have as parents. I said, would you be willing to come speak tonight? And so she is absolutely here to answer questions, but I also wanted to give her the opportunity, if you would like, to speak about your own personal experience. Yes? So, well,
okay. So I am here to share my story and from the parent perspective. So my son is bipolar. We knew something was up whenever he was 2 and 3. I was hopeful at that point he was just a strong-willed child. That wasn't quite it. So the first time that my child tried to commit suicide, he was 12. I remember it very clearly. I remember taking him to Southwood and leaving there and literally collapsing in the parking lot. That was the first of many, unfortunately. So I believe everything happens for a reason and there is a plan. I have definitely become a better teacher. Absolutely. I see those those mental health disorders that you can't see with your eyes. And I am very passionate about advocating for children who have those disabilities that we can't see. I can't even tell you how many teachers said to me along the way, he's fine, he looks fine, I don't know what you mean. I'll just say they talked about me the next day in lunch because I shared with them what I meant. I was Mama Bear for a long time. School was hard. School was really hard. We felt alone. He felt alone. Staff didn't feel equipped to help, or they didn't believe, you know, he's not really that anxious, you know. Yes, he is. So, moving forward, like I said, it was the first of many times. Actually, he was 6 the first time he said he wanted to die. He was 12 the first time he attempted. Since Halloween this year, I've almost lost him twice. And it is a whole family. It is a whole family disease. It really is. My 2 daughters have post-traumatic stress disorder because of everything that they endured throughout their entire lives. When my son finally left the house for the first time, we knew it, but we didn't know it. You know, like we knew it was hard on the girls because, I mean, I would put them in the bathroom and tell them to lock the door and don't come out until it's quiet. And so once he left, he got a job and he moved out. My oldest daughter said, I can go to sleep now. And I was like, honey, what do you mean? And she's like, I would never go to sleep until I heard him snoring because she was afraid he would come in and hurt her. Gut check, right? Like, I knew it was hard, but I didn't know how hard. So now he's out on his own, kind of. with a lot of support from these organizations. I have called the crisis hotline many times. He's probably on a first name basis with some of your volunteers, but I'm very thankful that they are there, because when he calls me in one of those states, I'm mom, right? So it's really hard to not let emotion come into that at that moment. So we've gotten to the point where I can say, hang up the phone and call crisis, and he will do that. So, you know, that's good. That's a great sign, and he's taking advantage of many of the resources that you heard about tonight. Why am I sharing my story? I want McGuffey parents to know they're not alone. If you know anyone who goes through difficult times at home with their child, I am happy to meet for a cup of coffee. I will sit. I tell parents, I had one parent this year, and she started saying things, and I go, oh, well, did this happen or this? And I said, you can tell me anything. Most likely I've experienced it. But there's such a stigma that's still attached to mental illness, and people don't want to talk about it, and they think it's their fault. Like, what did you do wrong? And my husband's an engineer, I'm a teacher, we're educated, we go to church, and my child has a mental illness that causes a lot of difficulty. So that's why I approached Dr. Oberg, and I mentioned it. I just, like I said, if you know anyone, I am a Joe Walker. I'm actually the only fourth grade teacher this year, so you won't get confused. But I'm here to help, because when we first started going through this, when he was 3, pounding on the door, you know, I was alone, and I did think it was my fault. I'm not good enough. I don't have a good enough schedule. What am I doing so wrong? And it has taken me 22 years to show myself some grace. And I work on it every day. I am here if anyone ever needs anything.